The Dead Have Never Died by Edward C. Randall. Read for you by BlueFriend in beautiful BC. Chapter 9. Atomic Life. A note from BlueFriend. This chapter is really interesting, but it was written in 1917. Okay. In the mentological research for the discovery of the life principle, investigators are going far. Surpassing wonderful is the Carl Zeiss ultra microscope, which uses only the radiating energy within the portion of the solar spectrum which is beyond the violet. These waves are so rapid they do not affect the retina and are hence invisible, but they do activate silver emulsions on highly sensitive plates. Inconceivable, minute life, living atoms, or bodies in motion, are photographed on rapidly moving films. The result is beyond imagination. When these long strips of successive radiographs are illuminated by strong electrical light under a powerful projecting lens, uncounted thousands of unknown kinds of living atoms are seen moving with intense activity. De Vries names these minute particles concealed in living matter pangens, and says that they are quite another order than chemical molecules, that each must grow and multiply by self-division. These pangens are probably units containing mind, and, if so, his opinion gives a mind cast to the universe and all that it includes. I cite these two scientists to show the tendency of the modern investigator and to illustrate how far beyond the comprehension of man is the life pangen. Those learned investigators living and working beyond the physical plane, having had greater opportunity to carry on research, go far beyond earthly experiences, because they have had a greater opportunity to acquire knowledge of the fundamental principles of nature. And it is from this source that I have gathered the information that forms the basis of this work. It is very difficult at the coming of dawn to say just when the night ends and the day begins. It is impossible to say where one color ends and another begins in a rainbow. It is likewise very difficult to draw the line of demarcation between the physical or tangible and the etheric or the spiritual. The one is tangible and the other intangible. The one is measured by 3 dimensions and comprehended by 5 senses. The other is demonstrated by clairvoyance and clairaudience, the 6th and 7th senses. I deal now with the part the physical atom plays in the economy of nature, leaving the etheric, no less material but higher in its vibratory action and functions, to the discussion of etheric form. We now know that what appears to be solid matter, tangible and dense, which we can see and feel, is but an aggregation of physical atoms and molecules slow in vibration, and that within and back of all material is a directive force. One cannot conceive a directive force that does not possess intelligence. Within every atom going to make up the tangible mass is that something called inherent energy or force, which science readily admits because it is possible to feel and see the expression of that force. We now go one step further and say that force or energy, wherever found or however expressed, is life, so that we cannot, if we would disassociate energy from life, or force from life, or life from force or energy, simply because they are one and the same thing. Nature abhors stagnation. Life cannot for one moment be absolutely still. Its vibration is so high that there is no inactive substance in the world. That is, every substance has more or less movement, which causes continual change of form and expression. The great law that we call evolution influences every atom in the physical world. It is the parent of progress. It is that something inherent in everything from which springs the desire to increase, reproduce, and reach a higher state of development, and that influence is as strong in the atoms and molecules making up what we erroneously call the inanimate mass as in the animate mass or the individual. We have no conception of the maximum or minimum of motion or movement. The higher the development of the mass, the more rapid its vibration. The lower the mass development, the lower its vibration, the more dark the substance as shown by the spectrum. It is most difficult to treat a subject so beyond our experience. It is very difficult to explain a condition so far beyond our comprehension. But if we had never interested ourselves in these great unknown forces of nature, we should not have made the wonderful progress already attained. It is easy to demonstrate that there is something called force in all substance going to make up the tangible mass. We take coal, liberate the energy and force therein contained, and utilize it in our industries. We go down into the earth and liberate the gas, bring it to the surface, let it come in contact with fire, that is, a substance higher in vibration than the gas itself, and through chemical action we have what we know as combustion. We have released the life force or the energy. We have dissociated the life force from the tangible garment. We take water. With heat, increase its vibration and convert it into steam, and we have released the energy or life force contained in the water from its physical garment. And so we could take, were we possessed of greater knowledge, any substance found in the earth, and if we knew how to break down its tangible covering, we would have what science terms energy, but what I term life. The life force clothed with tangible substance in the process of alteration that is continually taking place through its affinity for other life atoms, is constantly changing form through likes and dislikes, increasing vibratory action to the end that the life force in the mass may, through such continual development and progress, reach the highest perfection possible in the physical world. For example, ultimate physical expression in mankind. In other words, by natural laws, these individual atoms, through a process of refinement, through association and disassociation, through likes and dislikes, through chemical combinations and growth, ultimately find expression in the individual. It has been said that everything in the physical world pays tribute to mankind. It might better be said that everything in nature, obeying the great universal law of evolution, when it reaches its highest physical development, finds expression in man. Every living creature on the face of this globe was originally an atom, or aggregation of atoms. When it was first clothed, it was so small that no physical eye could discern it, and no magnifying glass could discover it. Its inception was in the dark, where the rapid light vibrations could not impede its development. Through the process of growth, it was evolved. Vegetables, plants, grains, animals, fish, and many of the birds of the air, through digestive action, were utilized to clothe and furnish the physical garment which the individual required in its growth and development. That physical garment is entirely constructed from those tangible substances furnished by the mass which is necessary for that special purpose, so that we say that the physical form is being constructed out of the mass of matter. And we find that the physical garment that clothes the vegetable kingdom is taken from the earth's substance, still lower. All animal life is constantly taking from the mass the substance which will aid its physical growth. It is all one splendid process of change and growth and progression, all tending towards the apex where it stands, man, the most perfect physical being that nature seeks to produce in this world. Looking in the mirror, we see reflected not the individual, but the outer garment of the individual, constructed of animal and vegetable matter. In dissolution, we simply give back to the fields and to the common earth that which we have temporarily borrowed. The gross material composing our bodies has served its purpose, and it goes back to Mother Earth, back into the retort, to continue its progression until, at some time, the substance which covers our etheric form shall reach individuality and then continuity. Through the labyrinth of creation, there is no rest. Vibration is the pulse of nature. Superficial observation teaches that matter never moves unless acted upon. The sailing ship is propelled by the winds, the engine by steam. There are in nature endless manifestations of force in moving planets and constellations, in growing vegetation, and in man himself. Motion belongs to the atom. The universe is but an aggregation of atoms, and its motions are just what those of a single atom placed in its orbit would be. Each atom must be its own motor, and the combined influence of all is the influence of the earth. Mathematical demonstration and deductive reasoning justify this supposition. The agency of an Almighty constantly propelling them does not meet the demands of reason. Life is born of motion. It is first traceable in the mutual attraction between atoms in solution, arranging themselves in definite forms. In the affinity and the repulsion of particles. It may appear startling that the forces which create the crystal are living forces, but the data available by known and accepted laws justify that statement. I would direct attention to the energy contained in the atom. I would impress on the public mind that energy is life, and that all life is material. That is, it's made up of that substance we know as ether, which is so high in vibration and so refined that it is not evidential unless clothed with heavier substance, which we term physical. Moreover, from the life contained in the atom, by evolutionary law, man has evolved. We cannot understand life as expressed in the individual without knowing at least something of its origin, and the law through which it finds expression in man. End of Chapter 9. Chapter 10. Etheric Environment. Desiring a clear comprehension of the etheric spheres outside of the physical, and having opportunity to speak with one very learned and advanced in the afterlife, I said, "Describe, if you please, the spheres in which you live, with special references to their tangibility and materiality." The gentleman answered, "There are 7 concentric rings called spheres. The region nearest the earth is known as the first or rudimental sphere. It really blends with your earth's sphere. It is just 1 step higher in vibration. Growing more intense and increasing in action are 6 more, distinguished as the spiritual spheres. These are all concentric zones or circles of exceedingly fine matter encompassing the earth like belts or girdles, each separated from the other and regulated by fixed laws. They are not shapeless chimeras or mental projections, but absolute entities, just as tangible as the planets of the solar system, or the earth upon which you reside. They have latitude and longitude, and an atmosphere of vitalized air. The undulating currents, soft and balmy, are invigorating and pleasurable. I asked, "How does the landscape appear to you?" And he replied, "The surface of the zone is diversified. There's a great variety of landscape, some of it most picturesque. We, like you, have lofty mountain ranges, valleys, rivers, lakes, forests, and the internal correspondence of all the vegetable life that exists upon your earth. Trees and shrubbery covered with most beautiful foliage, and flowers of every color and character known to you, and many that you know do not give forth their perfume. The physical economy of each zone differs from every other. New and striking scenes of grandeur are presented to us, increasing in beauty and sublimity as we progress. I asked, do the 7 concentric rings or spheres move with the earth as the earth moves? He said, although the spheres revolve with the earth on a common axis, forming the same angle with the plane of the ecliptic, and move with it about your sun, they are not dependent upon that sun for either light or heat. They receive not a perceptible ray from that ponderable source. I then asked, from what source do you receive your light? He replied, we receive our light emanations wholly from an etheric sun, concentric with your sun, from which central luminary there comes uninterrupted splendor, baffling description. We have therefore no division of time into days, weeks, months, or years, nor alterations of seasons caused by the earth's annual revolution, for the reason that we have no changing seasons as you have, caused by the action of the sun on your solar system. We, like you, are constantly progressing from day to day, but our ideas of time and seasons differ widely from yours. With you it is time, with us it is eternity. In your sphere, your thoughts, necessarily bounded by time and space, are limited, but with us, thoughts are extended in proportion as we get rid of those restrictions, and our perception of truth becomes more accurate. I asked, how do you use matter, change its form and condition? And he replied, matter, with us, is only tangible as the mind concentrates upon the object. Then the force of the mind or thought sends its vibration around the object, holding it, in a measure, tangible. Of course, this is something very different from what you call tangibility. Without this mental concentration, the vibration pulses indifferently. That is, the natural condition of matter in our zone. It requires the thought to change its form and condition. The vibrating action of matter is measured by the space necessary for the volume. I asked, how can this material condition in which you live be demonstrated? He answered, one cannot prove to a child that steam, that pretty fascinating substance, is harmful until the finger is burned. Neither can one instill the truth into an older mind until it is not only opened, but has the capacity to comprehend that all is material in different states of vibration is easily grasped by the thinker. it is impossible to prove by your laws to actually demonstrate the existence of matter in the higher vibrations in which we live, so that men may comprehend. When you deal with matter in the physical, you apply physical laws. When you deal in matter spiritual, you apply spiritual laws, practically unknown among men. The best possible evidence is the vision of the clairvoyant together with deductive reasoning, which, as we have said, is really the highest order of proof. "Have you ever thought," he said, "that the result of every physical demonstration reaches the consciousness through the avenue of reason? The mentality in a higher state of development comprehends a fact in nature without physical proof." I asked, "Tell us something of your social life, your scientific research, and religious teaching in the plane in which you reside." He replied, "With regard to the social constitution of the sphere, each is divided into 6 circles, or societies, in which kindred and congenial spirits are united and subsist together under the law of affinity. Although the members of each society unite as near as may be on the same plane, agreeing in the most prominent moral and intellectual features, yet it will be found on careful analysis that the varieties of character in each society are almost infinite, being as numerous as the persons who compose the circle. Each society has teachers from those above, and not infrequently from the higher spheres, whose province is to impart to us the knowledge acquired from their experience in the different departments of science. This we in turn transmit to those below. Thus, by receiving and giving knowledge, our moral and intellectual faculties are expanded to higher conceptions and more exalted views of nature, the power of which is no less displayed in the constitution of spirit worlds than in the countless resplendent orbs of space. Our scientific researches and investigations are extended to all that pertains to the phenomena of universal truth, to all the wonders of the heavens and of the earth, and to whatever the mind of man is capable of conceiving. All of these researches exercise our faculties and form a considerable part of our enjoyments. The noble and sublime sciences of astronomy, chemistry, and mathematics engage a considerable portion of our attention and afford us an inexhaustible subject for study and reflection. Nevertheless, there are millions of spirits who are not yet sufficiently advanced to take any interest in such pursuits. The mind, being untrammeled by the gross material body, and having its mental and intellectual energies and perceptions improved, can, by intuition as it were, more correctly and rapidly perceive and understand the principles and truths on which the sciences are based. In addition to our studies, we have many other sources of intellectual moral and heartfelt enjoyment from which we derive the most ineffable pleasures, some of which are social reunions among children and parents, where the liveliest emotions and tenderest affections of our nature are excited, and the fondest and most enduring reminiscences are awakened, where spirit meets in union with spirit, and heart beats responsive to heart. We have no sectarian or ecclesiastical feuds, no metaphysical dogmas. Our religious teachers belong to that class of persons who were noted during their probation on earth for their philanthropy and deeds of moral bravery, who, regardless of the scoffs and the sneers of the time-serving multitude, dared to promulgate and defend the doctrines of civil and religious liberty. They urge upon us, too, the necessity of cooperation in the reformation and advancement of our more degraded brethren by instructing them in the divine principles of love, wisdom, and benevolence. They instruct them in the soul-inspiring and elevating doctrines of universal and eternal progression, and in the sublime truth that evil is not an indestructible and positive principle, but a negative condition, a mere temporary circumstance of existence, and, furthermore, that suffering for sin is not a revengeful and malevolent infliction of God, but a necessary and invariable sequence of violated law. They teach also that according to the divine moral economy, there is no such thing as pardon for sins committed, no immediate mercy, no possible escape from the natural results of crime, no matter where or by whom committed, no healing of a diseased moral constitution by any outward appliances or ceremonial absurdities, and finally, the only way to escape sin and its consequences is by progressing above and beyond it. I asked, what is spirit as that term is used? He replied, spirit is the one great power in the universe. The combination of spirit forces is the great power for good, and through the absence of that force, many undesirable conditions develop in your world. All in the universe is but an expression of this great force, and if this spirit force were not material, were not a substance, how could it take form and have growth in the physical plane? Those still in your world make a great mistake when they, for one moment, imagine that our world is not a material one. It is foolish to think of an existence without substance. How can there be a world beyond the physical unless it's material? Without it, there could be no afterlife. Strong, invisible bands of force hold the great system of spheres in proper place. It is all mind force, and all force is life, mighty, unchanging, unyielding, and this mind power is increased by every individual life that is developed in your creative sphere. It has become a part of the individual life force of the universe, and each day it adds something to that force called good. This addition is made not at dissolution, but from hour to hour as the mentality increases. Such teachings appeal to reason, and I accept them. Our earth is still very young. Before it took form and shape and a definite place in the procession of worlds, other planets and solar systems were growing old. It was but yesterday in the calendar of time that the convulsions and eruptions of this earth, in its effort to take definite form, threw up the mountains, made valleys for the seas, and destroyed, in its labor, the peopled continent of Atlantis. It was but a little time ago that the pyramids were built and temples were erected upon the banks of the Nile, that Belshazzar in the temple of Babylon saw invisible hands right upon the wall. Grecian and Roman splendor, Mohammedan culture and refinement, Napoleon's conquest, and religious freedom are all things of today. Time is no more measured by the calendar than a grain of sand measures the extent of the desert. There are so many things that we as a people do not know. We have gone into the depths of the earth and learned just a little of geology. We have done something in botany. We've searched the skies, discovered planets, measured distances, and learned just a little about astronomy. We have succeeded in putting a single harness on electricity without knowing what it is, and have developed our individual selves in about the same proportion. But we have really no conception of space, or of the thousands of suns and solar systems connected with ours, or of the medium between them. Science has no conception of the nature and origin of the electric force, and knows absolutely nothing of the magnetic force, the part that it plays in nature, or the influence it has in this world of ours. The world has little conception of matter except in its grossest expression. It knows nothing of solar space. It has not developed sufficiently to comprehend that the universe is material and that the different planes are similar except in density. The race has not yet developed sufficiently to understand what life is, or the source from whence this atom that develops self has come. Nor do we yet appreciate or understand the duties and responsibilities that rest upon the individual and his relation to that society and to himself. Certain elementary propositions have been enunciated and demonstrated, and many so-called great minds say that beyond them we cannot go. Life force is as much of a mystery to science today as it was before the Christian era. The primary propositions which must be understood are these: the earth is one of many creative planets. Progress has only commenced. Nothing in the physical world has or will reach perfection. All present knowledge is elementary. There are no limitations. Life is eternal and will continue to develop, expand, and increase through the untold ages yet to come, beyond man's comprehension of time. Our beginning we cannot know with our present development. Knowledge of our end is equally impossible, but the present is ours. End of chapter 10.